How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I got some updates for you guys, and we're also going to try and get some work done on the Frankenstein Civic today. So let's roll that intro and get into it. Well, guys, it almost looked like spring was here. We had about a week of spring weather and my driveway was almost dry, and wouldn't you know it, we got 2 days of snow, and now we're stuck with a bunch of snow on the ground again. So I've been spending most of the morning today kind of just cleaning up the yard and clearing some of the snow just so I can get to the sheds, so I can get some car parts out of there, just so I can move down the driveway too, because it was packed pretty good. So yeah, that took up a good part of the morning, but that's all done now. I'm going to spend some time in the garage, and here's kind of what I got going on. So if you guys remember the last video that I posted, I basically had the entire cold side finished up. I just needed to get some hose clamps to get it fully in place. So I did go and pick up some hose clamps. So all the couplers are now clamped good and tight. I'm gonna trim these tails off of here yet, just so that it looks a little bit better, but it is good and solid. I know I had planned on making a bracket on this pipe yet, just to secure it to the side here, but I don't think that's gonna be necessary, because I have everything clamped down with the hose clamps, and it is very solid as it is right now. And I want to leave some room for moving, just so that when the engine moves a bit, it's not going to cause any cracking or any stress on anything. So I think it's good enough as it is. And then also we were going to work on the alternator, because it is in the way of the turbo inlet there. So I had a few comments. People were giving me suggestions on what to do. Some guys were saying just relocate it to the bottom, which I think is just going to create more problems, because then it's going to be in the way on the bottom. But other people were saying just to get rid of the tensioner that I have down here. Let's see if we can get a good angle here. So this is the tensioner here, and this is the turbo inlet. So if I'm able to get rid of this tensioner, that may give me just enough room that I can run a coupler on here and a pipe, so that I can put an air filter on the end of it. So I'm not sure where I'm going to run the pipe to yet, because we don't have a whole lot of room to maneuver. I would prefer it to be up here, kind of out of the way of getting water and stuff into it, but it doesn't look like that's going to be an option with the alternator right here. So we're going to have to try and figure something else out for that yet. But for the time being, if I can get this tensioner off of here, I think that's going to give us just the amount of room that we need. Another option that I have, if this doesn't end up working, if I still need a bit more room, I may end up just purchasing a spacer for in between here, because you can get the spacer with this bolt pattern on it, and it'll just drop the turbo down a little bit. It might not look the prettiest, but it should function just fine. So if it comes to that, then I'll probably end up purchasing one of those too, just to drop the turbo down a bit. But it looks like by just removing the tensioner, that should work. So that's kind of my plan today, is just to kind of get that alternator situated and see if we can figure out if that's going to work without a spacer, or if I need to purchase a spacer. So some updates that I have on the engine currently. So a couple of weeks ago I did get a quote back from Jared at Lambda Motorsport. So we got everything planned out on the quote, kind of what parts we're going to need and how much the end cost is going to be. So we got all that worked out, and I sent him payment for all the parts, so he was able to order those. So we got pistons coming, we got new connecting rods, we're going to get piston rings, bearings, everything basically to get the short block put together. And then he's also got me a quote for what all the machine work is going to cost. So he has ordered the parts, and I believe the block is now at the machine shop, as well as the head. So all the machine work is going to get done there. But with everything going on in the world, everything's kind of slowed down or shut down right now. So that's going to kind of slow down this process quite a bit. And on top of that, I don't know if you guys know, but I've been working 2 jobs. So one of them for my regular income, and then I work a second job that basically just funds the Frankenstein Civic build. So what's happened now is my main source of income, they've actually shut that down. So I'm out of work there for right now for the time being. It's supposed to just be temporary until this thing passes over, so fingers crossed that everything can get back to normal soon. But my other job is actually going to offer me full-time hours, so I will still be able to provide for my family, but that just means I won't have any money on the side to pay for the car build at this time. So unfortunately, it's just something that had to happen, but it is what it is. We're gonna push through it, and we're gonna get this done at some point. So I hope you guys just stay tuned, be patient with us. We're gonna get this stuff going again, but for the time being, we're gonna keep trying to push out content for you guys. We're gonna kind of just make some videos of stuff that we have already. So I do have some parts kicking around that I can still make content for you guys. I know Tim's still working on his Sylvia quite a bit, and we also have some parts for the Furious Civic kicking around, so we might start digging back into that thing kind of once all the snow melts, and then we can kind of get it back into the garage, and we'll make some content that way too. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys kind of a heads up of what's going on so that you're in the loop, and if you notice that we're not putting out as much Frankenstein content or progressing with the build as much as we would like to, that's kind of why. It's not really in our control right now. So I do have some money put aside for this car, but I want to err on the side of caution and just kind of save it in case I need it for some emergency funds or something like that. So we're kind of just playing it safe right now. And we're going to ride this thing out, and then once everything's over and back to normal, hopefully soon, then we can get back to work. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get back to work on Frankenstein and see if we can get this alternator figured out. Alright guys, so with the alternator out of the way, now you can really see just how in the way this tensioner is. Even if we get at it from this angle here, that whole piece is basically blocking the turbo. So my idea is trying to run it without this tensioner on here. And I know that my old Civic with a D16 Y7, on those alternators, they don't have a tensioner, at least mine didn't anyway, and basically if you wanted to tension the belt, you would just pry on it with a pry bar, tighten this bolt up here, and that's it. That's all that holds it in place. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do with this bracket. So what I'm going to do is get this bracket off of here, and I'm gonna have to modify it. But first thing I'm gonna have to do is get the turbo and manifold back off of here so that I can access that bolt back there, so we can get this bracket off. So I'll get the turbo off of here, then we'll get this bracket off of here and kind of see where we're at. Alright, so I got the alternator bracket off of the block now, but I am seriously running out of space to work in here. I still have all the intercooler piping and stuff laid out from the last time. I got the turbo box here, I got some other parts laying around, so I got to do some cleanup here. I also got this subwoofer, which it's a funny story kind of how I got it. So basically a guy showed up on my doorstep randomly the one day. I answered the door and he's like, "Hey, I saw all the Hondas on your driveway and I was wondering if you had any parts for sale." And I'm like, "Yeah man, I got parts for sale. What do you need?" So we headed out to the garage to see what I had available. All he really needed was a shift knob. So I'm like, well, I got a whole collection of shift knobs. So we were looking through and he just picked out the simplest one because he's like, I just need whatever works. So I gave him a shift knob and asked what I wanted for it. I'm like, I don't know, like 10 bucks. I don't know what they're worth. And he's like, yeah, I don't have any cash, but I got a 10-inch sub if you want that. I'm like, I have no use for a sub right now, but it's better than a shift knob sitting in my box. So I'm like, sure, whatever. So he gives me this 10-inch sub, and it's in a ported box also. I don't know if it even works. He just kind of gave it to me, and then I gave him the shift knob, and I'm like, hey, what kind of car is it for? And he's like, well, he's got like this old Honda Civic. I think it's like a 93, basically just like our Furious Civic, but it's an automatic. And I'm like, well, I just handed you a 5-speed shift knob. And he's like, yeah, that's okay. I think I can make it work. He just needs something to kind of hold the pin down so we can shift from park to drive and whatever. So he's just going to run a screw through it or something like that. And I'm like, hey man, if that works for you, go for it. I'm not going to judge, but all the power to him if he can make that work and schmade something together. But anyway, guys, I'm going to clean up this mess that I got here, give myself some room to work, and then we're going to get started on modifying this alternator bracket. Alright guys, so we're all cleaned up and I got some room to work now. And I've been looking at this alternator bracket for a bit, and I think I figured out what I'm going to do. So as you can see, I've made some markings here and here. So I think what I want to do is I want to cut this part of it off, and I want to cut it here, and that's going to eliminate this one bolt, because this one was kind of in the way of the turbo as well. Like I wouldn't be able to remove the bolt without removing the turbo, which is kind of annoying. So I think if I was able to just eliminate this part of it, I'll still have 3 bolts holding the alternator on, which I think is plenty. This is a big heavy cast piece, so I'm sure 3 bolts is solid enough. So then what I want to do once this is eliminated is I want to cut along here so that I can eliminate the tensioner as well. So I want to cut this, and if we go to the back side of it, you can kind of see the line that I would want to follow. So if I just kind of get in here and just eliminate this whole section of it, it's going to take a lot of cutting and grinding to get it the way that I want it to be, but it's something that I got to do, I think. So that's kind of what I'm going to start doing now. I'm just going to get out my grinder with the cutting wheel on it, because that's about the best tool that I have for this, and just start cutting pieces off and grinding and trying to get it into the shape that I want it to be. But I think that's going to work. That's what I'm going to work on now. Alright guys, so I went through 3 cutting discs and butchered a Sawzall blade, but we did get this chunk off of here, so the adjuster is now gone, and I also got rid of this chunk so that we only have 3 bolts holding the bracket on now. So this is just a very rough cut just to see if this is going to work. If this ends up not working, it's not a big deal. I do have a spare bracket that I can use, and I can just go back to OEM. But I want to test fit this now with the alternator and the turbo, just to see if everything is going to work out this way. If it does, then I'm going to do some more cutting and grinding just to clean up this bracket a bit more, just because I'm not too happy with the way it looks right now. I'm kind of thinking too, I can probably cut this chunk off of here yet too. There is some structure behind it, but it's not really attached to anything now because I took the tensioner off. So if I get rid of that piece, it'll just clean this up a bit more, and that's a bit of weight reduction too. Not that it's a huge difference. So anyway, let's get this thing test fitted. We'll see if everything lines up the way it should, and if it does, then we can clean this up the rest of the way. Alright guys, so I got the turbo back in the bay and I got the alternator on with the belt and it's tensioned. It seems to be holding just fine. So I think this is going to work. If we come under here, you can see where the tensioner used to be, and it no longer obstructs anything. The only thing in the way now, it's a bit dark, but there is still the tensioner tab on the alternator itself, so I'll have to remove that as well. But this definitely looks like it's going to clear now. It's tight, but I think it's going to work. That way I can put an air filter on the end of it somewhere. I still haven't figured that out yet, but at least we're making progress. It looks like this is going to work. Alright guys, well I am stoked that I was finally able to figure out something to do with the alternator. This seems like it's going to work. I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to make this work the way it is. If you guys have any suggestions for me, definitely let me know in the comments below. But that's probably going to wrap this video up for today. Thanks a lot for watching. If you haven't checked out the MT Garage shop yet, we do have merch available. We've made some new sticker designs as well, so definitely check that out. We have the link in the description below, so check that out. If you like the video, guys, definitely give it a thumbs up. Like I said, drop us a comment below, let us know what you think. And if you haven't subscribed already, definitely consider subscribing. We got lots of content coming out. We usually put out a video every week. We do Honda stuff, we got Nissan Silvia stuff. We also have a Mark III Supra drift car that we may be drifting in the near future, so definitely stay tuned for all those projects, and we will see you next time.